all love action anime here. However, I do think it's good to be able to switch it up a bit once in a while. Instead of going through the more popular stuff, I'm going to dedicate this video to giving recommendations for action anime that I feel deserve a little bit more love. These are the shows that probably have a thing or two that held them back from breaking out and becoming more mainstream and popular. So for this edition of the list, I've got 10 titles, but I'm not going to be ranking them since it's too subjective. Let's not waste any more time then, and let's get the show going. Anyone heard about Altair, A Record of Battles?
いつかわかるさ。私は戦争が好きなわけじゃない。帝国の延命を願う一人の愛国者なだけだ。
In a season that's relatively tame, I mean, we've got Made in Abyss, Gamers, Classroom of the Elite, and Gakegurui, but not much that became too mainstream, one show that still managed to get buried underneath all of them is Altair, A Record of Battles. However, it's quite easy to see why. It seems that military-themed anime just isn't something that becomes too mainstream unless there's an extremely notable or charismatic element to it, like Saga of Tanya. Altair, on the other hand, actually sets its focus on something that we don't see too often in military anime, the behind-the-scenes. The tactics, the economics, the politics behind it all. It's something that people don't seem too receptive to, but nonetheless it's interesting. Definitely not something you'd see every day in the realm of historical fiction. It's more a tactical approach to the whole idea of warfare, and if you're someone who's up for a different take to the military and war genres, following the adventures of Two-Grill Marmot could be something that you could try. Ushio and Tora is up next. We've been used to seeing a lot of old classics being reimagined and modernized these days, but it seems as if they weren't as common back then. Or maybe it's just a result of the remade titles being not as popular those days, with the exception of Hunter x Hunter. One such example is Ushio and Tora, the 2015 remake of an early 90s anime. It's not the first time we've seen the story of a boy protagonist being forced to work with a supernatural being that may or may not be hostile. We've seen this type of dynamic in stuff like Parasite, for example. But all in all, Ushio and Tora does relish in the good old traditional Japanese culture aesthetic. It does feel like a spiritual ancestor or inspiration to shows like Inuyasha or Natsume's Book of Friends. It's a pretty straightforward shonen that starts off with a monster of the week fare before the real plot kicks in. However, it does have its moments, and I think that it's a show that shonen fans might enjoy. Following that is Nura, Rise of the Yokai Clan. Carrying some similar vibes to Ushio and Tora is Nura, Rise of the Yokai Clan. Nura, however, does share some similarities with Hitman Reborn, where the focus is on the protagonist's clan and their stories that are entwined with them. The show may seem a little plain at first, but it's overall a very enjoying watch once you get to know much of the characters, start to care for them thanks to their charming personalities, and root for them as they fight various threats to both the human world and the existence of the Nura clan. And trust me, there's a lot of them in the 2 seasons of the show's run. The show is a great watch, but one major thing I can say that holds it back is how it ends on a major cliffhanger with no anime continuation in sight. It means that you just have to jump off and go read the manga at some point, but you know what, the journey's worth it in my opinion. Karakuri Circus follows, and it's another show you might enjoy. Somehow, we find ourselves back to Kazuhiro Fujita. If you did your googling in the middle of the video, you'll know that this guy is the creator of Ushio and Tora, which we just featured a few moments ago. Just like the other title, Karakuri Circus brings a lot of the old school violence and the vibrant expressions that the creator's known for. Instead of going down the supernatural route, Karakuri Circus takes a more modern approach, instead integrating its battles with dolls and puppets, giving a distinct style that blends battle shonen with a mild science vibe. It's probably something like Unbreakable Machine Doll, yet another show that got buried in the hype of seasonal counterparts, and in this case predominantly Kill la Kill. The adaptation got mixed to mostly negative reactions from the fans, which could be a huge reason as to why it got buried in the blockbuster season featuring Bunny Girl Senpai, Goblin Slayer, Slime, Alicization, and Zombieland Saga. While it may not hold a candle to the mentioned shows in terms of popularity, Karakuri Circus ended up being one of the enjoyable side watches that I did have at that time. It's a side watch for a reason though, but I did have fun with it in spite of them cutting a lot of stuff from the manga. What I feel is a very strong anime, even taking the changed or cut content into account, is the ambition of Oda Nobunaga. Understandably, the idea of gender-bent historical figures in an anime series raises some eyebrows. Yeah, there's fate, but a lot of these types of shows typically ended up leaving no cultural footprint at all, being relegated to fan service fests, which pivots into the reputation these gender-bent shows got generalized into. The ambition of Oda Nobunaga is a show that does little to disprove that stereotype. It actively relishes in the sexy, has a pervy main character in an isekai before the genre boomed and those tropes became scrutinized, and has a pretty pragmatic approach in adapting source material. But deep within all of that is a diamond in the rough. You see, while Nobunaga does play around with the fan service, it also contains a pretty engaging story about both warfare, history, and the budding relationship between our protagonist and the gender-bent warlords of the Sengoku era. The last arc, the one with the most changes from the source material, in fact feels better to see in what the anime did due to the payoff and the climactic feel it gives in terms of the hero's relationship with Nobunaga and the gang. Still, it's got that curse of having an insane cliffhanger ending, plus it aired in the same season as the first SAO, so it's a case of wrong place, wrong time. Not that it would explode in popularity in a weaker season given its genre and the amount of relatively tamer fan service compared to actual ecchi shows. And if you want more videos on shows that flew under the radar like this one, then don't forget to hit the like button and share the video. It's my way of seeing which content you like and which areas to focus on, so let your voice be heard through the views and likes. We resume with the most recent show to be featured so far, World's Finest Assassin.
それを発射音のしない弓で
The year's 2021. Isekai titles are a dime a dozen and have practically taken over the anime world. The genre's also garnered a not-so-stellar reputation, and the big titles often find themselves in some sort of controversy, with Mushoku Tensei being one of the starkest examples of that. However though, in the same season that featured the second part of Mushoku Tensei is this Isekai title that at least tries to spice things up a little bit. World's Finest Assassin looks to provide an Isekai experience with some creative changes. Gone was the loser otaku protagonist and the quest to save the world, and in comes the grizzled assassin tasked to defeat the previous hero in this fantasy world. In spite of several titles' attempts to spice up the isekai formula with some twists with the premise, they often fall into the same trappings of the genre eventually. For World's Finest Assassin, I think it succeeds in skirting those trappings, well, to some extent. Sure, you've got the controversial themes, the betrayed, cynical protag trope, and overpowered protagonist, the harem atmosphere, but they're all done in a less upfront and more muted way than a lot of isekai. It becomes even more amazing when you recall that the guy behind this is the one who made the mimetic redo of Healer. Compared to the latter, this thing's a masterpiece, and the same could be said when putting it alongside half the random isekai titles out there.
なんて魔力量だ
Now, if you wonder what other creators have been up to, I present to you Ida10 Deities.
速さと回復力を生かし遠巻きに戦われたらわしに勝ち目はないのにな単純なやつだ
It feels fitting to follow up Redo of Healer Guy's creation with this other underrated action show, this time from the guys who brought us Goboyashi-san and Interspecies Reviewers. With those titles on their resume, I'm pretty sure you know where this one's headed. And true to form, Ida10 Deities makes no effort in hiding its fan service. Still, I think the show has some pretty good content once you get past those sketchy elements. Good content that got buried in the relatively weak summer 2021 season. Ida10 Deities has been criticized as an over-the-top and edgy show that's full of style over substance. While I won't be refuting those claims, what's to say that these kinds of insane fight animations, over-the-top power scaling, and high-tension fights are actually bad? I mean, at the end of the day, it just means that the anime appeals to a certain niche, and that certain niche would definitely enjoy this storied history of the war between demons and Ida10. All in all, you can clearly see the love put into adapting these series with its incredible production values, and I'm positive the anime team know what they're doing and who this show is made for. Still, it doesn't help for its bid in popularity if there is any. It also doesn't help that it aired alongside Goboyashi-san, ironic as it may be. If you're the type who's always raring to watch a show that goes in your face with the pretty visuals, eye-popping fights, and a dash of fan service, then this one could be the show for you. However, if you're up for the more artistic side of things in the traditional sense, perhaps you can try Vampire in the Garden. The Netflix model is something that I've often criticized in my videos. I don't have empirical data for this, but I really think that one of the best things when watching anime is the weekly wait and the community discussions that come with it. Immediately dumping stuff in one go for a binge model may be appealing for some, but come on. Have you ever seen engagement for something like Stone Ocean? Vampire in the Garden, I feel, falls victim to the same model, because I do feel that the show has what it takes to be a cult classic. Vampire in the Garden's strongest suit comes in its production values. With Studio Wit and IG at the helm, not much is to be expected, and the art really shows. It comes with an engaging story that, while isn't unique, does the job well enough without being too dragging or too short. Of course, Vampire in the Garden caps at being cult classic level, never breaking the glass ceiling of being a mainstream anime. The overall vibes, the not so unique premise, and all that makes it something that feels like it's better done as a movie. That doesn't sound bad by any means, and if you want a title to relive the good old medieval fantasy era of the 2000s, then you should definitely check it out. We follow that one up now with Super Crooks. Of course, we lead a Netflix title into another one, don't we? Super Crooks, released in late 2021, looks to provide the anime medium a representative for the edgy superhero-like titles that the West always had in its pocket. The superhero genre isn't new to anime by any means. There's really something unique in the overall feel that Super Crooks gives. Then again, it's a series by the guy from Marvel who brought us things like Kick-Ass. So everything makes much more sense now. Super Crooks takes us to a vibrant world of superheroes and supervillains. Hardly a unique premise, I know, but I found myself growing endeared to the characters as the show went on. They're charismatic in their own ways, and their dynamic together is a joy to watch. They really fit so well in this world that the creator came up with, and the same goes for their role in this story that quickly rushes into full throttle. I really enjoyed this show. It's not groundbreaking in terms of anti-hero / superhero shows or heist shows, but it does bring a different flavor to it, if you will. Something unique, Western, yet works so well in anime form. I'm at number 10 already. Alright then, let's end it with Rage of Bahamut Genesis. Cygames has become a multimedia juggernaut in the modern days. Grand Blue Fantasy, Princess Connect, Shadowverse, Idolmaster, the list just goes on. With its stranglehold over the market in mobile games, it's inevitable that some lesser-known titles get sent to the wayside. One such franchise under its umbrella is Rage of Bahamut, which is a shame because said franchise came with a pretty damn good anime. Rage of Bahamut is set in a world that very obviously serves as the predecessor to what Cygames fantasy games ended up looking like. High fantasy settings, with humanity being caught up in a war between gods, demons, dragons, and all the other creatures from these kinds of worlds. Kind of like Final Fantasy, I guess. However, while it's easy for the Rage of Bahamut anime to be a soulless commercial for Cygames' mobile card games which never really made it big overseas, it's surprisingly great at building a world and increasing the stakes to make us all care by the time the big showdown comes. There's a lot of great fighting and exploration, and generally a lot that looks cool thanks to the creative designs and animation that made this my surprise of the fall 2014 season. In fact, I think the game actually did the anime a disservice by being completely dated for mobile game standards back then, closing off potential avenues for the Rage of Bahamut franchise to become more mainstream. Thanks to that, most people probably only have one passing knowledge of Rage of Bahamut thanks to Shadowverse and Grand Blue Universe, but the original Cygames IP, the granddaddy of them all if you will, has a really great anime that a lot of people seem to have missed out on. With 10 shows under our belt, which one of those is your favourite? I'd love to know your reasons, so do tell me in the comments. Oh, and share some action shows that you think are underrated while you're at it too, and we could feature them in a future video if this one does well. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. I'm looking forward to seeing you again in the next video, as we'll have a lot more cool ones coming your way.